What's up, YouTube? Zachary Michaels here. I'm an actor, and this is An Actor Reacts. Today we'll be talking about episode 5 of We Are Who We Are. Let's discuss. Before we get started, if you're new to my channel, be sure to hit that subscribe button, give this video a thumbs up, and leave a comment below. Episode 5 of We Are Who We Are is titled Right Here, Right Now, number 5. As the power struggle between Sarah and Richard escalates, the relationship between their wives continues to grow. Later, Caitlin asks Fraser for help making a bold statement. Okay, so episode 5. Now, this one got back on track after last week kind of, took a detour from the storyline and the character development. This week got right back on, and a lot of big moments happened for the characters. So let's get into the recap. Okay, so this episode starts off early in the morning. We're seeing the two families kind of wake up and seeing the morning routines from Fraser's family versus Caitlin's family. And honestly, the two morning routines are almost identical. So I think that was maybe a little comment on how they're so focused on how they're so different, but at their core they're the same. But I could maybe be reading into that. But anyway, I think we really got some interesting stuff in Caitlin's family's morning routine. We just kind of see their household kind of deteriorating more and more, how it has been the past couple episodes, and how we see a lot of by the end of this episode. But anyway, in the morning, Richards is kind of barking orders at everybody. He tells Jenny about, his new truck arriving today, and is she going to be there to see it? And, she says that she's going to be busy this afternoon because she's helping with the new arrivals on the base, which, Maggie also says to Sarah when Sarah asks for her help at something later on in the day. But we'll get to Maggie and Jenny later on. But after, he's shouting around the household in the morning, he sees that Danny isn't awake, and then he starts shouting for Danny to get up, and then he says to Jenny, why haven't you taught that boy how to wake up early in the morning? And she says, why can't you teach him? Another little thing about how Richard is kind of detached from Danny. But Caitlin goes to check on him and realizes that he's not even home. She looks out the window and sees him walking up, and she does the sisterly thing, and she goes and covers for him and is like, oh hey bro, thanks for checking my bike, but I won't need it today. And then she kind of rushes off. But they do have a little moment where she's like, do you have a secret, bro? And he's like, I do, so shut up. And I'm not quite sure what the secret is. Maybe it has something to do with Islam. Maybe he's going off to pray in the morning with a group of people. But there was also a moment later on in the episode where he was seen with Valentina. So I don't know if there's maybe something there. I don't know. But I'm interested to see what his secret is. But anyway, Caitlin rushes off, and Richard gets kind of jealous, where are you going? He goes and follows her and sees that she's meeting up with Sarah. And I found that really interesting because we saw in that her second episode, she was waking up early to do stuff with dad and spend time with him, and now she's waking up early but not for dad. She's waking up to go and hang out with Sarah. And he of course gets a little jealous, and I thought it was interesting because now Caitlin has left, Jenny has left to go off and do stuff with Maggie, and now it's just him and Danny, and he's like, oh well, my new truck's arriving today. And we just see again that disconnect between the two and them really not having a relationship, and Danny being kind of shocked. He's like, huh, what? And then he's like, oh, okay, cool. He's surprised at how Richard's reaching out to him. But anyway, we go on to follow Caitlin and Sarah, and we see that Sarah's taken her to the shooting range on the base, and kind of she's taking Caitlin under her wing and teaching her new things. And Caitlin is really just in awe of Sarah and loves building that relationship with her. Let's see, because in the next scene we see Caitlin come to school, and she like has Fraser smell her fingers, which I thought was just a really weird thing to do. Because generally when you do that, it's kind of like a sexual nature. Like it's like guys doing that, like, oh, smell my fingers. We won't get into the specifics, but you know what I mean. So I thought that that was interesting that she was doing that with like the shooting of the gun, and like her like love of Sarah, because she talks about how your mom is, amazing, she's like perfect or whatever. So I thought, like, because generally like it's used, for men bragging about sex, and that's kind of, a big thing, and like not, what's it called, it's like a stepping stone of manhood, and she's using this as a stepping stone of her, like, manhood, I guess, or like maturity and growing up. So I just thought that that was like an interesting, like, smell my fingers versus what it generally is for men, and smell my fingers what it is for her and her like coming of age story. But anyway, a bit earlier in the morning, Fraser finds a note on the bulletin board at school, and it's for Harper. And he, like, he pushes off the whole like your mom's amazing thing, at least for the moment, because he does get back to it in a second. But he pushes it off and is like, whatever, that's just my mom. She's an alien, sit down to ruin the earth or whatever. And then he gives her the note, and I don't know how she didn't get this immediately, but she doesn't get it immediately, and she's like, for Harper, so what? And then he's like, how many Harpers are in this school? And then she's like, oh, it's the girl, like, should I call her? And he's like, you're an idiot, she thinks you're actually Harper. But this all really excites Caitlin, and kind of sets into motion the stuff that happens the rest of the episode. But she goes off to her class, and then Fraser texts his mom, like, calling her a cunt, and you've gone too far this time. Stay out of my life. I'm not going to talk to you for 11 days. And he actually sticks to that, because later on in the episode, he comes home and she's trying to talk to him, and he, like, just doesn't respond. And then she texts him, it's like, how long? And he's like, now 10 days. But honestly, is that terrible of a thing that he won't talk to her? Because I mean, every time we see them, he's like beating her up. So maybe she won't get beat up for the next 11 days. But I don't know. She really just needs to discipline that boy, because at this point, it's like it's a free for all at that house. And this is kind of skipping forward a little bit, but she kind of judges Richard and Jenny about, being really basic in life, and how Caitlin isn't basic, and they're not. She's like, poor girl, because they're too basic for her. But it's like, maybe you could take some lessons from them, because Fraser is a freaking maniac, and Caitlin's so well behaved and so good because those are her parents, and your child is a mess. But anyway, back into this storyline. Let's see what else. What's happening? Oh, the next scene, Fraser and Jonathan, they have a cute little moment at the library. Now I know at the beginning, like the pilot episode, I was like, I hope nothing develops between those two. But I do kind of like their little, I don't even know what to call it, but I like that little connection that they have. And every time they're with one another, Fraser just gets so like freaking giddy. So they meet up at they don't meet up at the library. They both just happen to be there at the same time. And Jonathan loans Fraser this book, and he's like, don't tell anybody that I recommended this to you. It's about a perverted Nazi. And he's like, he's a badass. And Fraser's like, well, I'm a badass, so I'll read it, That kind of bad flirting that you do at 14. And then Jonathan leaves after their little moment, and Fraser, like, when you like beat yourself up after like an argument, or like just a conversation that you had with somebody, and you're like, I'm a badass? Why the hell did I say that? Like, that's so stupid. That's so cliche. So he has that little moment, and it was just really, it was kind of adorable. Like, I like seeing the moments that they have. And it's kind of nice to see Fraser just like have those moments of being like a kid that like I really recognize and identify with, because I'm just like, oh, I've had so many of those moments in my life, still have so many of them, when I'm like, why did I say that? Very socially awkward. But anyway, back into this. Oh, and then we cut to like Jonathan and Sarah, and Jonathan's telling Sarah about the men in the town, kind of, how we saw in episode 3 when the men got into a fight, and Jonathan's telling her about that, and he's like, these men are animals. And she's like, I think you should have a little compassion because you know how it can be to be away from home. You go a little crazy. But then he says, should I alert Ramirez about this? And she's like, no, uh, get Richard. I don't know how to say their last names, but she's like, get Richard, bring him to me. He goes and gets Richard from his like truck unveiling, I guess. I don't know why it was such a big deal about him getting a new truck, but interesting that he was so excited about it and was telling all his family members, but none of them are there. Just another little like nugget of how much their family has deteriorated. But he goes and gets Richard and brings him to Sarah, and Sarah like it's kind of this like I can only think of like vulgar words to say, but it's like I'll say a penis measuring contest between the two. Because they're first like comparing the trucks that they have, and then she's like, do you speak Italian? And he's like, so I can get my point across. And she's, well, Caitlin's Italian is perfect. And then he's like, well, it's easier for kids. And then she's talking about how she studied it in school plus Portuguese because my wife. Do you speak your wife's language? Which he obviously doesn't because he doesn't respect his wife much at all. But I do think he loves her. But they're just kind of going back and forth, and then she's like, well, I don't know how things were under the last commander, but under me, we're going to have a higher standard. She brings up the rioting that his men did, and he's like, well, they disrespected America, and she's like, well, you're going to apologize. And it was such a like demeaning moment. Like she was obviously wielding her power over him because they obviously don't get along. And they have this moment when they're just staring at each other and they're not saying anything, but you feel that tension. You feel all the words that they want to say in that moment, and it's like this show has so many of those moments where like characters aren't saying anything, but you feel what they're saying through their eyes. And this was that intense moment of like I don't want to say hatred, but really intense dislike between the two. And he feels disrespected, and I think she feels that energy from him, and she's really trying to assert her dominance in that situation. Let's see what else. But she has the man come, and Richard, tucks his tail between his legs, and he apologizes to him, and they go off on the day. Let's see what else. The men attacking the town. Do do do. What is the next scene? Oh my gosh, I completely skipped my favorite moment in the episode. After the morning comes and we see, the early morning when Maggie and Jenny are talking about, they have to help the new arrivals today. We get a scene of them helping the new arrivals, of course, and then they kind of go off on their own and they get it on. Now, I was saying in episode 3 how I was seeing that connection between them, and they were really able to kind of support one another, and they really got one another because they're both unappreciated in their marriages. And now we see they've started a little fling, and I said that it looked like it could go romantic because they had such a deep connection, and it did. They go into one of the not abandoned, but one of the empty houses, and they get it on. And like I had a smile on my face that entire scene because I love both characters, and I love that they found each other. I don't think it's gonna last for too long, but I love that they have one another for at least right now to kind of pump each other up and make them feel better. Um, but we see throughout the episode them kind of just being there for each other, and Jenny kind of opens up about uh, Danny and Richard and their relationship, and how she already had Danny when she met Richard, and he was in Nigeria as a contractor, and he got along really well with Danny, and it was like he was already Richard, so she made a choice. and that in that choice she kind of detached from all of who she was and kind of became this new woman almost for Richard. Like she talks about how they picked Danny and Jennifer because they're simple American names, and that Americans can't be bothered with Nigerian names. And we know at this point that she used to be Muslim, and that's why Danny's trying to find that connection to it. But she used to be Muslim, and now she's a Christian American woman, Jennifer, with her son Danny and Caitlin, nice simple American names. And I think it's a big part of her like losing herself and why she feels so lost in that marriage, because she's given so much of herself away. And there's another little nugget of why I think that Maggie and Jenny won't last, because she talks about how her aunt was that way, and how she was reported in her village. And then towards the end of the conversation she's like, I'm not. And then Maggie finishes the sentence like, you're not that way. So there's definitely some insecurity in that whole situation. I don't necessarily know if Jenny is lesbian. I would actually say that she's not. I think she just needs human connection, and right now Maggie's the person giving that to her that she can't get from her husband, unfortunately. But let's see what else. Now let me get back on track. I can't believe I forgot to talk about them. I loved that scene. But then we're back in school and we see kind of this new Caitlin from that first episode. When we first got a glimpse of Caitlin, she was in class reciting a poem, no passion, no no real connection to the material. It was just really dry. We saw a very kind of stale person, I guess. And now in this scene, I'm assuming it's that same class because she's reciting a monologue or something, or this story, and we just see this new alive Caitlin. She's like happy and she's laughing. She's giving so much passion, and Fraser's there backing her up the whole time, laughing, wooing her on. But found an interesting monologue that she was giving. It seemed to be this man who was having sex with this woman and talking about how much of a crazy broad she was, and their sex life and stuff. And it was just good to see like a new brighter Caitlyn, because it was very like reminiscent of like her journey as a character so far, like that kind of closed off person that she was at the beginning, to now we're like little over midway through and she's this bright happy person. And I think she really steps more into her by the end of this episode. And that monologue was just a representative, I think, of who she is now. I found, because she picked a male monologue about having sex with a woman, and I think she's finding more of her identity. I think Caitlyn is going to be identifying more as Harper. But after that scene, the teacher cuts him off. We cut to this next scene at the mall, I think it is. I'm not quite sure, but I'm going to call it a mall. But we see her at the mall, and she gets kind of fixated on this barbershop and these men cutting their hair, kind of what's it called, foreshadowing what's going to come in a little bit in the episode. But before we get to that, we see Caitlin spot Sam and Brittany. Now, I was saying last episode about the kiss and Brittany really wanting attention, that maybe she does like Sam, but we see them and Caitlin's like, are they a couple now? And she's like, we don't need to leave yet, when Fraser says. But then when she sees them kissing, she gets up and like storms off. And I'm wondering what exactly that is, because it was obvious when she was with Sam that she didn't like him. And I said last episode how she was taking all this stuff that she was seeing Brittany do and kind of tucking it away for later, and now later is now. And but like, she obviously wasn't into Sam, but I think maybe it's kind of that final nail in the coffin, and that's why she was hurt. Because even though she didn't necessarily love that relationship with Sam, I think seeing Sam and Brittany together kind of, it made it like for sure that Caitlyn doesn't want to be a part of that, that group anymore. I was saying last week about how it was, or last episode, about how it was the deterioration or like the final hurrah of Caitlyn in that group, and this was like the final nail in the coffin because I think she looks to both of them as her friends, and seeing them kind of betray her, I guess, was like the final like I don't connect with these people anymore. I'm not about that life. I'm Harper. I Fraser's the only one who gets me now. He's the only one who really matters because that's really the only moment that we see Sam and Brittany in this episode. After Brittany she sees Caitlyn and Fraser going off, and then she runs to Caitlyn and is like, "Are you hurt? Or are you upset?" And Caitlyn says no, which now that I'm thinking about it, maybe she really wasn't. It was just like well, that's that. I gotta move on now. And then Brittany says, "I love him. I've always loved him." And Caitlyn just says, "Sure," and leaves. I think she's honestly done with them now, and she doesn't need them, or at least she feels like she doesn't because she has Fraser. But so that scene happens, and then we go off to Caitlyn and Fraser. We see them like Fraser's in the bathroom peeing, and Caitlyn kind of comes in. And I've never been this comfortable with anyone. First, to just let them in the bathroom and watch me while I'm using the bathroom, but then to also like she wants to go behind him and she grabs his penis and wants to control it in a very non-sexual way, and she asked like if it's gonna turn him on, and he says no, and she just wants to hold it. And then I'm just laughing because when he's like, "Don't squeeze it," just really funny. I think she's definitely stepping more into Harper and more into someone who identifies as a male, and she's discovering all those things, and she just kind of likes the not power, but she likes how it feels to pee and hold a penis, I guess, as if it was coming out of her. It just really intrigues her. I just find her whole discovery journey so interesting because it's not something that I'm familiar with at all. So all the different things that really mean something to her are really, they really, every time I'm like, huh, that's something I never would have thought of. But so the next scene, Fraser's kind of geeking out over Blood Orange and talking about all the facts of the guy. And this kind of reminds me of me because when I'm really interested in like an artist or just really anything in general, I kind of geek out and look up all the details and this and that and yada yada yada, and I know it all. And I probably have done that same scene with my friends, like me geeking out about something and them just kind of humoring me. But they bring up about like he's got a concert coming up, so I don't know if we're gonna be able to see that soon, but that'd be something fun to see. But the main thing in this scene is Caitlyn trying to take her hair and make like a little mustache, and she's getting upset because it's not staying. And Fraser kind of helps her, and she's like, "No, it needs to be thicker." And then he kind of talks about him like this. He imagined more for her, and she's like, "Well, I exist outside of your mind." And then she kind of takes a jab at him like, "Sorry that your mom likes to hang out with me more than you." And they have they have their little tit and tat moment. But then she kind of gets frustrated about her hair, and that like this disguise is never gonna work. Oh, because I didn't even mention that she messaged Julia back, and they're gonna meet up. So now she's trying to prepare herself as Harper, and then she gets frustrated with her hair and how it's never gonna work, and she wants to just cut it off. And Fraser comments on how she can't do that because her hair is what people love about her. And when he said that, I kind of thought, and I was like, actually, yeah, like there has been the show places really subtle things throughout, and I usually catch some of them, but that is one that I didn't. Like every single episode, there's been like a comment on Caitlyn's hair. Like I think about last week when Craig is like drunk and high, and he goes and just plays with her hair, and he's like, "Oh, I love your hair." So it's like a big part of Caitlyn, and I think in this next scene we see them go get the clippers, and they have this really kind of scary moment but thrilling for them, and they cut off her hair. They cut off essentially Caitlyn. because that's her big Caitlyn feature is her hair. That's what everyone loves about Caitlyn. Everyone always talks about her hair, and really her hair is like kind of the last thing, I guess, visibly connecting her to Caitlyn and her femininity. Obviously, there's other things in her body, but like big like appearance thing that connects her to being a girl, that connects her to Caitlyn, is her hair. And now that they've cut it off, it's like she or or I won't even say she, they fully can step into Harper now. Like they are Harper. So that was just a really just fun scene to watch because, like I said in this show, they don't do anything for fake. So I know they were really cutting off her hair, and I'm sure that was just such a thrilling moment for the actress and to be in that scene. Like they gave that energy off, and like I felt it. Really cool scene to see like Caitlyn transform with that one big moment into Harper. Like huge moment. Like that's the one in the trailer that I was like, oh, that's gonna be a good episode. And I was right. Like that moment was it's such a huge moment for Harper. Let's see. Let else. So then we go back to Maggie and Jenny after their blissful day with one another, and now they have to go back into their real lives and their real partners and their families, and we kind of see the difference between when they're together versus when they're in their actual lives. First, Maggie goes home and she's asking where Fraser is, and Sarah tells her that she's out at the movies with Caitlyn, that he's out at the movies with Caitlyn, and that's where we get that scene of like when she's like, "Oh, poor girl, her family's so basic, and she's so like interesting and complicated, and like has so much more, so many more layers to her." And Maggie asks her like, "Am I basic to you?" Interestingly enough, Sarah doesn't actually answer the question. She just kind of deflects and, starts kissing Maggie and taking a sip of her beer, and then they start having sex. But it's pretty, it's pretty telling that she didn't answer the question because it could have been an easy no. But it says that she doesn't really value Maggie. She thinks that she is basic, and we get that same kind of neglect in the relationship with Jenny and Richard, who also, interestingly enough, have sex with each other. A little more depressing sex than Maggie and Sarah have, but still sex nonetheless. It's almost as if their partners kind of intuitively know that their wives are unsatisfied and think just having sex with them in those moments will, kind of fix it. But anyway, before we get to before we get to Jenny and Richard having sex, Jenny comes home and Danny seems to be waiting for her, and he ends up kind of grilling her about hanging out with Maggie, and she just kind of plays it off and is like, they're our neighbors. I'm just being nice, trying to keep a cordial relationship, even though we know it's a little more than that. They getting it on. But anyway, she gets like, how's Valentina? Because Danny and Valentina were together at the mall area too when Jenny and Maggie were there, and they spotted each other. And he deflects from that as well. I don't know if there's actually something going on with Valentino, or if he just had like a point that he was trying to get across to his mom. Because I don't think Danny would necessarily try to be in a secret relationship with Valentina, with how much he loves Craig. But there's maybe something there. Maybe they're just leaning on each other, or maybe she's Muslim as well, and she's like teaching Danny something about that. I don't know, but that paired with like his secret that he was talking about earlier in the episode, I'm not quite sure what that is. But anyway, he's grilling his mom about, why were you with her? And he's like, those aren't good women. And then he says like, my dad was Muslim, wasn't he? And so that answered all the questions about like them knowing about, you know, Richard not being his dad and yada yada yada. And like earlier in the episode, Jenny was telling Maggie like she doesn't actually know what Danny feels about Richard, because it's hard to know with Danny. But I feel like in that moment he made it clear, and she kind of didn't want to hear that. So she's like, "Your dad, Richard, is a Christian," and that obviously isn't what he wants to hear. He's really searching for some kind of connection to something, and I think everybody shutting him out, especially his mom, is not gonna help the situation at all. But she's like, your dad Christian, your dad Richard is a Christian, and basically, so that's what you are because he is your dad now. And he starts to storm off, and then he's like, how much stuff are you going to like lose, how much are you going to lose of yourself? I can't think of the actual phrase. What does he say? I wrote it down. He says to her, oh, how many single things are you going to turn your back on in one life? And calling her out, because she's kind of made it apparent about how much of herself that she's given away to be like this American wife to Richard. Like, she made a choice to live this life, and now it's not only her suffering though, because her child is suffering too, because he doesn't feel any connection to anyone in his family. But he kind of storms off after telling her off and putting her in her place a little bit. And he's like, "Oh, my father, Richard, is in the garage." She goes in the garage, and he's like trying to wrap his hand for fighting, which he's not good at. Jenny used to do it way back when. He's like, "I can never remember how you did it." And then as of recently, Caitlin was the one doing it for him. But now we know Caitlin's off as Harper now, and she's really diving into that life. So he's kind of lost her for that, and just their connection. So Jenny comes down to do it, and then they begin to have sex. Which, again, interesting that both of their partners had sex with them as soon as they came home from cheating, basically. But we see this very depressing sex scene. He calls her what I assume is her name, or her Nigerian name, Lubaba, and she starts crying, and she's like, "You haven't called me that in 16 years. Don't call me that name." But he continues to call her that name and continues to have sex with her, even though she's obviously crying. And then after they have sex, he's like, "I'm there for you, right? I'm always there for you." And she says, "Well, what about Danny? You said you'd always be there for him." And he's like, "Have I ever, has he ever wanted for anything? I am there for him." And she says, like, "He's still waiting for you," which I think is just it's so true. A lot of times parents think that just by giving you the necessities in life that they're a good parent, and that they have done their job, which I guess they've maybe done their job on paper. They've provided for their child, but so you need so much more from them. Like, your parents kind of throughout your life set up how you're going to, as you grow up, they kind of set up your ideals in life and what you think and how you're going to go out into the world. And right now they're not setting up Danny for going out into the world well. One, anger issues up the wazoo. Two, he feels disconnected from everyone in that family. Like, he doesn't feel a part of it. So he's probably going to be disconnected from people his entire life if things continue the way that they are. So I hope Richard can, step up with when it comes to Danny, because just because he's providing Danny with the bare essentials doesn't mean that he's providing him to be a good human being in the world. So that scene was really deep, just as the one with her and Danny was. And it kind of actually disgusted me how he kept having sex with her even though she was crying. Like, it just talked more to, with both Sarah and Richard having sex with their wives after they're feeling neglected, and they kind of call them out for that. Or with Faith, or that's the actress, or with Jenny crying, it's like you're ignoring what they're actually saying. You're ignoring what they're actually feeling. You're ignoring the clear signs just so you can feel all right about yourself. Like, sex isn't gonna cure that. So just really again, these families, while on paper they may seem like they're so different from one another, they're so similar, especially Sarah and Richard. They both want the power, and they both kind of neglect what others are feeling for their for what they feel. uh but yeah, that's that scene. Also, random side note, was he already naked? Because there was no like transition. Like, she was wrapping his hand, and then he started grunting on top of her. Like, there was like no single pull down the pants or anything. I was like, when? So I thought at first, I was like, oh, maybe they're not having sex, they're just kissing. But then it became apparent that they were actually having sex. But there was literally no transition unless he was already naked. But anyway, unimportant, just something that I noticed, and I was like, that feels weird. But anyway, then the next kind of portion is kind of a fun portion of the night. Is kind of like the double dates almost between Caitlin and Julia, and then Fraser and Jonathan. Not double dates because they're happening at two. They're like not happening together, but we're seeing them kind of back and forth. So first, I'll go through Caitlin's little date night. She meets up with Julia. She has her hair cut. She's got her little fake little mustache, and she's again fully Harper. I'm gonna try to call them Harper for at least the rest of this portion when they're fully stepped into Harper on their date. Um, but they're with Julia, and they're having a cute little time. Harper is smoking for the first time. Julia's taking Harper, opening Harper up to new things. And then we see them, making out, having a good time. Harper playing, being a little playa. And then Julia comments on Harper's mustache, like, how'd you do that? And Harper's like, what? And then Julia says, I know you're a girl. Like, just tell me how you did it. And that just completely breaks Harper. They have to just leave, and they're like going off, and Julia's like, no, Harper, I really like you, don't go. But I think Harper finally felt like themselves. They felt like, I am Harper. I am a boy. This is who I am. And to have that interrupted, and that what they thought was like this really special moment with this special person, who really, another person who saw them for who they are, it kind of got ruined. And now I guess the Caitlyn again, she wipes off the fake little mustache, which I don't think was a good decision anyway, because that doesn't, I was on Fraser's side, like, that's not what being a male is. Like, you don't have to have a mustache. It's but anyway, regardless, they're hurt. Caitlin Harper is hurt. They try to call Fraser, but Fraser's having his own little date with Jonathan at the movies, which was a much lighter scene than Caitlin's ended up being, or Harper's ended up being. So then we see Fraser goes to the movies, and he's there alone, and he sees Jonathan come in, and Jonathan appears to be on a date at first with this girl, but it seems like it was just a girl that he knew, and they're talking, and she's like, I'm gonna go to the back because I can't sit too far up front. Jonathan prefers to sit up front, so he goes, sits, and then the two of them kind of spot each other, and they both get kind of happy about it. So I think it's kind of a mutual thing too. Like, it's not just Fraser like fantasizing. Like, I will say that Jonathan kind of does flirt with him as well. But we see them spot each other, and Jonathan kind of ushers him up to the front, like, come sit with me. And they watch the movie, and then they go on and have this cute little night stroll. And it's not that I'm rooting for that relationship to ever develop into anything, but I do like seeing them in those moments together. Like, it's honestly really sweet how they're able to like connect with one another. But they end up going on a little walk throughout the town, and kind of opening up to each other about their lives, and their hopes and dreams for that they have had in life. And just a little quick tidbit that I noticed. I remember from the first episode, Brittany offers Fraser her ice cream and he doesn't take it. And she's like, "Oh, you're one of those people who doesn't eat off of other people." And he's like, "No, no, I'm not." But he obviously was. And because he's like, he's neurotic and he's kind of a neat freak and he doesn't like to do certain things. But as they're coming out of the movie theater, Jonathan has a drink, which I assume is his drink that he's not gonna finish, and he offers it to Fraser, who gladly takes it and starts drinking it. So I just thought that was something really to kind of speak on how comfortable he is already with Jonathan and how connected he feels to him. Because I don't think he would eat off of or drink off of just anybody like we saw with Brittany. But they have this little conversation, and Jonathan asks him if he wants to be a fashion designer. Fraser says, no, I don't want that, and he kind of explains to him what he wants to do and shows him pictures of that, which to me sounds a lot just like a fashion designer. But whatever. He tells him that, and Jonathan kind of starts, picking on him. He's like, "You wouldn't wear that though. That looks like a dress," which Fraser most likely would wear anyway. But he's like, "I'm just picking on you." And then he tells him about growing up, how he wanted to be a rock star, and he thought he was gonna be dead by 27 to be all like all the other greats, and how he was living with his mom most of his life, who's a hippie. And then at 15, he told his mom that he wanted to go live with his dad in Chicago in America because it's the perfect land to become a rock star. And his mom, he thought that his mom didn't care because she was just a hippie. Turns out that she did care and didn't talk to him for years because of that. And she was like, your dad's an asshole. And it turned out that his dad was an asshole because he already had another family, and Jonathan was just kind of a hassle for him. But he, because of his dad, he was able to get a passport, and then at 18, he joined the army because he didn't want to ever have a home again. So I thought his whole journey, I thought, kind of connected with Fraser as well, because like Fraser doesn't know his dad, and he says like interestingly, or he says something like, dads only matter to those of us who don't have them, and they were really just connecting on their like odd family dynamics and their hopes and dreams from when they were kids, and just really having this sweet moment and having a good time. So the night ended for Fraser a lot better than it did for Caitlin, and they kind of go and playing in, like, I assume something important on the base, because somebody starts yelling at them and they run off laughing and just having a good time. Just a really sweet, vulnerable, and just genuine, and what's the word that I'm looking for, like, I can't think of the word right now, but I'm gonna put it on the bottom of the screen because it so encapsulates what they represent. Pure. It was a very pure moment between the two. That's what I was looking for. Like a really pure, honest moment between the two, and their complicated relationships with their families, plus just how much they connect with one another and their dreams. But that's that, and then we get to the final moments of the episode. We see Fraser, or not Fraser. We see Caitlin go home. Now Richard, he discovered that Caitlin cut her hair. He saw, some hair in the bathroom. Then he saw his clippers, and then he went and searched and found a bag of Caitlin's hair, and he is pissed. He's sitting there at the door waiting for her to come home, and when she does, he goes in on her. He's like, "It's 11 p.m. Why did you do this? Did that boy make you do it? You're grounded for life. I don't want you around those people. They're just gonna fill your head with shit. You don't know how it is in the world for people like us." And I think that statement alone kind of encapsulates like Richard and how he tries to run his family. Richard is a black man, not in America, but in the army, an American black man. So there's certain pressures that come with that, and I think essentially he's just trying to protect his family by having them have nice simple American names, only eating American food, being in the military, being good American citizens. All that is to try to shield himself and his family from what they're already gonna face in the world because they're black, especially black Americans. So I feel like it's all a defense mechanism on his end, but he doesn't realize he's got like tunnel vision. He doesn't realize how much that is hurting his family. And something I forgot to mention, like earlier in the episode, Danny is getting even more into to Islam, and we see him like he's got like a DVD now, and he's really learning the practices of Islam, and I think he's real. That's it seems to be calming him. No Danny blowups in this episode. Like he told his mom off at one point, but it was still it wasn't too crazy. It was very like he was direct and didn't have to blow up because what he was saying was true. But we see him really diving more and more into Islam, and like I said, it really seems to bring him some calmness and I think hopefully some sense of belonging. Okay, but back to Caitlin and Richard. He's going in on her, yelling at her. You're a little girl. You don't know anything. And he's like, just tell me, why did you do it? And Caitlin can't even come up with words to say. She just kind of breaks down and starts crying and kind of falls back into that little girl aspect that he was just calling her. And it's like, Daddy. And in that moment, he realizes that he has to comfort his little girl. Like he has a lot of flaws, but I think he definitely does care about his family, especially Caitlyn. And in that moment, like all that anger that he had didn't even matter. He just wanted to protect his daughter. And I think it's hard for Caitlyn because she really doesn't know anything. She knows what she's feeling, but she doesn't know what it means. She thought she found somebody that saw her as a guy and that really loved Harper, and who that's who she feels most comfortable as. But then they called her a girl, and now her dad's calling her a little girl who doesn't know anything, and she feels like she doesn't know anything. So it was really tough moment for her, and she didn't have Fraser to lean on, who's somebody who would get her and be able to explain more stuff to her. But so in that moment, she just broke down, and I think hopefully we're gonna over the next couple episodes see her learning more about herself. I think she's gonna have to be separated from Fraser, so she won't be able to get all those direct answers. So she'll have to figure some stuff out on her own, and sometimes that's the best way that you figure out things. And hopefully Richard can figure out some things too. Maybe they'll be rebuilding their relationship for the next couple episodes, and they'll both be able to come to like a mutual understanding, and hopefully that helps him with bringing Danny in and his wife in. And I just hope to see their family like rebuild, because we've seen them go from like a fragile state, but they were all in tune with each other, to really like breaking down now. And hopefully we can see them kind of build up even better. But yeah, that's all I got on this episode for the recap portion. Now let's get into my final thoughts. Okay, so I enjoyed this episode. I thought it was a really good one. A lot of big moments, like I said at the beginning, a lot of character development, a lot of the story moving forward. I do still think that the third episode is my favorite one so far, but I think this one was definitely a good follow up to it. Hopefully, with the next couple episodes, we continue like developing the story and the characters more, and kind of can get them to a better place in their lives by the end of the series. And hopefully like we don't continue the trend of like every other episode kind of being like a standalone thing, because we only got like we only got like 3 episodes left in this series. So I don't want to stray away anymore. I want to stick to this story and hopefully see all these characters in a better place in their lives by the end, because I really do like all the characters. Some of them like make me a little angry sometimes, and I judge some of them, but I think they're all really well developed. So I want them all to be in better places, because even when I disagree with them, I can still kind of see things from how they are. But yeah, really good episode. A lot of big moments. Caitlyn fully becoming Harper. We got Jonathan and Fraser's relationship developing more. Jenny and Maggie, love that, even though I don't think it's going to end too well. What else? Oh, Sam and Brittany, their relationship like becoming like official, I guess. And then Caitlyn kind of officially stepping away from them. Danny really stepping into his religion, calling out his mom on like, you know, forgetting who she was and dropping things out of her life and kind of losing herself, and then mom calling out Richard on how he treats Danny, and then really just those two core families kind of deteriorating, but hopefully by the end they're able to like build up both of the families stronger than they started off. But yeah, good episode, a lot of good moments, and I'm excited for these final 3 episodes, and hopefully some big stuff happens. Anything else? Oh, a small little quick thing. I loved the score in this episode. I thought it really captured the mood of both like autumn, because it seems to be like real like fall autumn now because it's super windy and stuff. And then the score was just really moody and gave me that kind of chilly autumn feel, but also it like fits the mood of the episode so well because like it's autumn, moody, chilly, like people are going through it, like, and that score really reflected that really really well. So shout out to the composer, he did your thing so well. But now I think that that's all I got on episode 5 of We Are Who We Are, right here right now, number 5. I'm excited for the episodes to come. Leave a comment below, let me know your thoughts on this episode. Let me know if I missed anything in this recap review. Let me know your favorite moments, what didn't you like, what are your thoughts. Let me know all that below in the comments. Don't forget to like this video, share it with your friends and family, and subscribe to my channel for more content like this. Thanks for stopping by. See y'all next time.